If I was the Lando to your Daniel, absolutely, Jack. I would not even flinch. I'd be like, I'd drink the whole bottle.
True friends right there.
Right
true
out of
friends.
your shoe.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Grid Gals, a Formula One fan podcast where we talk everything Formula One.
We're three best friends from Chicago, Mary, Jack, and Catherine, and if you want to get to know us a little bit better, we'll have more information in the trailer, episode 0, that you can go check out about how we got to be friends and how we got into Formula One.
If you're newer to Formula One, you can check out our website for more information. We've got guides about all the drivers and all the terminology you need to know in the world of Formula One.
My name's Catherine, and I'm introducing myself first because my race driver was the winner this year, Max Verstappen. So if you hear me speaking, it's probably going to be about Red Bull and most likely shitting on Lewis Hamilton.
All right, damn, we're coming out swinging. Okay. I'm not sure I'm going to back that up, but...
Catherine might sound like a bit of a hater, but just so you know, she started as a lover. And I will say, most of us did. Most of us did until we followed on Instagram and saw the cringy running videos with Angela. Anyway.
I do love Angela, though.
I do love Angela. God
Even
bless
still.
her. Someone's got to do it. Anyways, I'm Mary, and I'm the certified weenie of the group because I always waffle on things and like to just give the other side. Mary, quite contrary, as I was told literally my entire fucking childhood. But anyway, I'll probably just say a lot of stuff that's all over the place, except the one thing I'm not going to waffle on is my absolute love for Sebastian Vettel. Big Vettel fan. And also big Ferrari fan. Understand he's on Aston Martin now, but he was on Ferrari when I started watching, and love the cherry red.
Well, last but certainly not least, I'm Jack. And I like going last in this order of introduction here. Was the last to join the Formula One train, but like most things in life, I trusted these gals. Spend a couple $100 on a ticket to Austin after watching one episode of Drive to Survive, but honestly it had Daniel Ricciardo in it, and my love of Daniel has not wavered throughout my support for Formula One, and you know, I'm just going to say right here and now, it's comeback year for Daniel. He's going to do great. So excited for this season. Alright, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Before we talk about this season, let's do a recap of the 2021 season because that was the first season that we all watched together. And so I think it would be fun to recap some of our favorite races. So why don't we kick it off with Baku? That's a good place to start.
And where is Baku the capital city of, Jacqueline?
Azerbaijan.
Also known as Jack's favorite country to pronounce.
I think I'm just proud that I could actually pronounce it correctly, you know?
And fun fact for all of our listeners who are geography nerds, there are only 2 countries in the world that start with the letter A that don't end with the letter A in the English language. One of which is Azerbaijan.
I was really looking forward to Baku mainly because of how much I heard all the drivers talk about it. Because watching Max and Daniel go back and forth, I was really just looking forward to it to say, well done, Baku.
That's fair.
That's really it.
And honestly, well done, Baku.
I feel like it lived up to the hype.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was really fun to watch because it was such a mess.
It was. Tire blowouts. Hamilton messed up.
And, you know, you got some new different faces on the podium. We did have Red Bull up there. Checo with the win. And Sebastian Vettel in P2.
Ah, there's the plug.
Yep, that's what we're doing this for.
Can't even get through the first race without the plug.
Okay, come on. It was the only time he actually got to keep his podium this season.
Okay, I'll allow.
We'll give you this one.
Thank you. But yeah, I mean, the tire blowouts, that was kind of scary, especially the fact that you had not one but 2 tire blowouts in the race. And based on the fact that you had that, Pirelli literally had to change their guidance. So big safety concern there.
And ruined Max's race.
Which, who doesn't love that iconic photo of him just kicking his tire?
Oh, the best meme.
Oh, so funny.
So usable. But even more than that, I feel like we have to touch on Hamilton.
Oh my god, it was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. You have everybody restarting after Max's blowout, headed into turn 1, and just no turn. Straight off the track, off the podium, out of the points. All because of a magic button. And I'm going to be completely honest to all of our listeners, I have no idea what a magic button is, what it does, or how you can blame a button for costing you and your team the win. But that's what happened.
Yeah, this was, I mean, already at this point in the season, Max and Lewis were pretty neck and neck with points, so this would have been a great opportunity for Lewis to pull ahead, and this really did not give him the advantage.
He sure did pull ahead.
Just didn't turn.
Alright, we need to stop shitting on him.
Maybe, but, I mean, to me, that was solidly Lewis's fault, and I feel like you can argue a lot of other things this season maybe were not his fault, which leads us to our next segment, and we'll debate the fault here, but we're talking about the 51G crash at Silverstone.
We just played this clip right before this because I don't think that I actually did end up watching this race this season. Obviously now knowing all of the context around how the season plays out, it was interesting to watch it back. Definitely watching it, you're like, oh man, that sucked for Max.
And I think this is where a lot of our debates have stemmed from since. And now knowing you haven't watched Silverstone is interesting because we've debated some of the Max and Hamilton crashes before, but seeing how Hamilton reacted after this crash, of which whether he caused it or not, and then how he reacted, how he apologized, that built up, I feel like, a lot of the tension, and some of my points on our arguments in later races were because of this one. But if you haven't seen it, then I think we need to do some deep dives on that one.
Yeah, because I think where this crash, too, differed from a lot of the other crashes was, first of all, in the severity. I mean, 51 Gs into the wall. Max was able to walk away, but he did go to the hospital.
Because on that one, too, they said Max actually went unconscious. And that's why it took him a long time to respond on the radios. So that was the biggest crash we've seen all season, especially in terms of G-force.
And I think it was one of the biggest crashes in a while in Formula One. And, you know, you can talk about the pressure Hamilton was under. His home Grand Prix, hadn't won in a couple of races, but at the end of the day, you send someone to the hospital, there's safety concerns, and
I think the big issue with this one was, it was Hamilton's Grand Prix, so I understand him celebrating, but he did a lot of laps around the track and didn't really ask about Verstappen's condition until much, much later.
Just about to ask, did he ask, or did he apologize?
I think what bothered me with that one was he didn't ask first if he was okay. I think originally it was either he, like, blamed Max for the crash, or said something to the extent of, like, is my car okay? And then after a while, I think when he went into the pits, he was like, oh, is he okay? So I think that buildup, especially when we talk about the later races, is important because we've gotten a debate about asking if the other driver is okay.
It's an interesting question that I just thought of. Do Max and Hamilton ever talk to each other? Did they ever have friendly banter? And did that shift during the season? Because that would be interesting.
I think listening to some of their interviews, they always just say, we're competitors, we have a respect for each other, but we're not going to sit down and have dinner.
Yeah, and I think they said that it's also a little hard when they're both public figures. All of their actions are so publicized. So to that end, yes, but they were saying it's still not as dramatized as, for example, like Netflix would make it out to be in Drive to Survive, where they were like, yes, tensions are high, but we don't hate each other.
Yeah, that's part of a sport. That's part of any sport, I feel like. I feel like people are way more intense when they're actually in the sport than when they step away and they have a second. Because I think, I mean, we've all played a type of sport, and I'm much more intense on like
absolutely.
soccer field versus taking a day and like the next day I don't care, but well, not as much.
But I was thinking about the whole car situation too, where Max touched Lewis's car.
Yeah,
just
that was
curious if like they're ever just chatting and then all of a sudden you hear that like Max touched your car, I'd be pissed.
Yeah, I would be interested to see the regulations on that too, because Vettel has definitely touched every car.
Well, speaking of Seb, that brings us to the next highlight, which is Hungary's Grand Prix. And so first of all, this was one of those races that was just really fun to watch as a fan because it was an absolute mess. Bottas hit people, Stroll hit people, bunch of cars out of place, and really just shook up the grid.
I like this type of race though, because it allows someone else to win. It gets boring to see a Red Bull, Mercedes podium every single time. So this one was fun because this was Ocon's first win. Always good to see someone else on the podium that's not one of the normal teams.
And also, Ocon did a phenomenal job. So, there's definitely some luck here with all of the different incidents that happened, but he took the luck that was given to him and performed phenomenally. I think the other one, too, at least for me, the highlight from this part was seeing the teamwork between Ocon and Alonso, and especially when Alonso was holding up Hamilton, and then to have him celebrate with Ocon after was a really, really fun moment to watch.
See, I'm surprised you didn't bring up Vettel taking second.
Well, because I was just about to say the heartbreaking part of this and why Hamilton actually went on to take second at this race was because at the end, Vettel did score second. However, it was taken away from him because he didn't have enough fuel left in his tank. And so to see Seb on the podium, I mean, Catherine was with me when we were watching this, just over the moon, so excited, but ultimately pretty heartbreaking to get that taken away as a Vettel fan.
Wait, can we talk about Monza now? Funny enough, this race almost ended Catherine and my friendship.
This is a debate I was talking about, because I think this one, now knowing that you haven't seen Silverstone and like the aftermath of all of that happened there, this one turns things a little different.
Yeah, so for context, the crash that we're talking about is where Lewis and Max were neck and neck going around a turn. Max had gone off of the track a little bit onto the curb, and his tire actually popped up over Lewis's head. So shout out to the, what's it called, the halo? Shout out to the halo, because then I don't know if Lewis would still be alive today, but Max's car actually had landed on top of Lewis's. That tire popping right almost onto Lewis's head. Grace's helmet, adrenaline's pumping, tensions are high. I had seen that Max got out of the car and just walked off. And to me, I'm like, man, his tire just hit that guy's head. He didn't say nothing. To me, I had some concerns about the fact that Max just decided to walk off and didn't even check to see if Lewis was okay. But, Catherine, I know you have a different perspective on this.
All right, listen. I realize that this looks bad, but in Max's defense, he did say when he was on top of Hamilton's car and got out, he looked back, saw Hamilton was still trying to reverse, and just walked away, knowing that if you're still reversing a car, you're probably okay.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for managing the situation the best you can in the moment. And I do think it's really easy after the fact as spectators and fans to say, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that, where in the moment it's obviously a different story. But the fun part of this race, and I'll hand it back over to the McLaren gal to really discuss, was the fact that with the top two contenders knocked out, get to see the other teams shine a little.
Well, already, Daniel had a great qualifying. He was in P2, and so right at the start, he pulled out in front of Max, and I was like, this isn't going to last. Me being a terrible fan is just trying not to get my hopes up for the end. And then after this crash happened, Daniel had still been in the lead, but it definitely solidified for me, all right, the main usual suspects are out. And so this was exciting all around. And then to have Lando finish second, then take the podium together. It was the only 1-2 of the season. But the big thing that Daniel does is a shoey,
which is drinking champagne out of one of their race shoes. Out of, well, his race shoe.
Well, alcohol kills germs. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we had a lively debate about whether or not we would do shoeys. And I think here the key consideration is number one, it's your own shoe.
It's not, though. It's Daniel's shoe. Or the winner's shoe. Because
that's true. Oh, you're right.
Lando had to drink it out of Daniel's shoe.
Yeah.
So did Zach.
I apologize. Because I'm thinking about from Daniel's perspective. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, to be fair, I think going back to what Jack said earlier about adrenaline pumping, at that point, like, I'd probably drink anything. You know, I'm just so... Well, I mean, it's your first one, too, which actually, this is McLaren's first win in several years, and I would do a shoey. Absolutely. And I would do it on a Daniel shoe. For sure. In that moment, when you're...
Would you do a shoey out of my shoe?
If you had just won... Like, if you had struggled all season, and then you came out with a phenomenal win... and I was there celebrating by your side, if I was the Lando to your Daniel, absolutely, Jack. I would not even flinch. I'd be like, I'd drink whole bottle.
True friends right there.
Right out of your shoe. And like, we've lived together for a while. You've smelled my shoes. I've smelled yours. Neither are great. And I would still do it.
Catherine, if you had to do a shoey out of Mary or my shoe, whose would you pick?
I'm trying to find a good excuse on this one.
Which one's it gonna be?
That's hard. Are we saying you won a Grand Prix?
Yeah, we've been wearing our shoes for 2+ hours. They're sweaty. They're sweaty Grand Prix winning shoes.
They're smelling some type of way. Let's just put it that way.
That's hard. I've smelled both of your guys' shoes and they are pretty rank.
Okay, all right. Let's we still want people to listen to this podcast. All right, Kat, you gotta answer the question. Whose shoe would you take a shoe out of if you had the choice?
I think I would do either. Whoever won, obviously. I think it's safe to say McLaren wins the Drivers' Championship or Constructors. We would do a shoey out of Jack's shoe because that's the team she's backing.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. And if Ferrari wins or one of the Ferrari drivers win, you gotta do it out of my shoe. I don't think this counts for Red Bull because they just won.
So
it's not the same. Because McLaren and Ferrari are both like midfield teams. So if one of them comes to take the top spot, I think that warrants a shoey. I think the current world champion winning again does not warrant me doing a shoey.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll take that bet.
Honestly, if fucking Haas wins, we should just all do.
Honestly, well,
oh yeah,
being our
I'll put that one on the record.
Country team.
We support the American team.
Do we?
That also.
I think they had an especially rough season this year.
Consistency, last every time. Set the expectation, meet it. Love to see it.
So now we have to go to an extreme low. I don't know if I even want to talk about it.
Yeah, from the highs at Monza to the lows of Sochi.
So at Sochi, this obviously was a dry race for the majority of the race. Lando had a comfortable lead at this point, and you could see on the radar that rain was coming. And so a bunch of drivers made the choice to switch to, is it called rain tires?
I think it's called inters.
Inters. There's inters and wets.
Inters and wets, okay. So they made the call to switch to inters. Lando did not. He thought that he was going to be able to beat the rain. And honestly, at that point, if he had boxed, I don't know if he would have remained still above Hamilton. I don't know if he would have won it, just with the way that the timing was working of them boxing. The rain did end up hitting, and Lando's tires were no match for the rain. Still heartbreaking. It would have been very exciting to see him, especially since it was so close after Monza. It was looking really good for McLaren there for a hot second. So devastating for that to be taken away for a little bit of rain.
I think it was an experience error because we have to remember how many years that Hamilton's been in Formula One versus Norris, and Norris is only a couple years in. I think since he was given the option of whether he wanted to come in or not, and I think he was just really pushing for first. He was obviously very excited to be leading the race. It was a difficult decision for him to make to come in and pit, not knowing what Hamilton would end up doing. It's easy for anyone to make a wrong call, but I think it comes with experience and knowing how you can drive in the rain and what to expect.
Yeah, and I think it's evident in the post-race interviews as well. He fully acknowledged that he made the wrong call. But especially as a young driver, you're poised for what has the potential to be your first ever Formula One victory. To give up the track position when the reigning 7-time world champion is driving behind you, how can you? You can, but definitely heartbreaking to see his first win disappear.
Especially because he could have won in Monza. I think at least he was thinking he could have taken it from Daniel if he wanted to, and maybe he could have. I guess we never will know, but that could have been his first, and then to lose it in Russia too, I think that was just devastating for him. I think even Hamilton would have been happy to see Norris win that one.
Yeah, and I mean, Hamilton has been complimentary towards Norris, and I think just came down to experience, and I think experience, getting to our next highlight in Brazil, that experience just really played a role in this. And for a little bit of context, Hamilton started the race at the back of the grid. He took a new power unit, and so took the penalty, started from the very back, and was honestly a really fun race to watch, to see Hamilton weave up from the back and eventually challenge Max, which gets to another controversial moment in the season, and especially controversial with the FIA's calls and how this shook out. But I mean, regardless, I think coming up from 20th place was really fun to watch. I mean, it's still definitely a Hamilton moment, but a different sort of Hamilton moment than what we saw throughout most of the season.
Because I think it's more fun to see Hamilton's skill passing people all the way up from 20th to 1st versus when you see him in 1st or 2nd, or you're only really passing one person. It's a different type of skill. It was cool to see that because we haven't really seen old Hamilton where if he was in a worse car, he was starting further back and passing people. So that was a really cool race to watch.
There's a lot of defensive driving going on too, which is also cool to see highlights of everyone who was like trying to make defensive plays against Hamilton too.
Yeah, you don't usually get to see a battle Hamilton and Ocon or Hamilton and Vettel. You haven't seen that for a couple of years. So definitely fun to see. And of course, there's always a Hamilton and Verstappen battle, and I think this call was particularly controversial because essentially what happened, they were at a turn, and Max was defending against Hamilton and went so wide that not only did Hamilton go off the track, but Max actually went off the track himself, which was the point of contention from Mercedes. However, FIA, there was no investigation necessary. This was where fans and the teams themselves kind of started to complain about the inconsistency.
Right, because I think the penalty application was difficult even in Silverstone because Hamilton only got a 10-second penalty for the crash versus Max got a grid penalty for the Monza race. So that type of thing slipped under the rug for most of the season, but then once we got to these later races, really applying the FIA's guidance was a little hazy here.
And I think all of that brings us to the most controversial race of the year, where absolutely the FIA, their calls, their timing came into play and can't be separated from the outcome, where I think, at least in some of the other races, enough happened before or after a controversial call that maybe it wasn't material in the outcome, but can't be said for Abu Dhabi. Both of the world championship competitors coming in on absolute equal points, equal footing, and to have it all come down to ultimately a controversial call, I think is something that left a lot of fans, the drivers, and even the teams that weren't vying for the championship feeling a little confused at the end of the day.
Yeah, I wish we would have known more of the guidance going into this because I think there were a couple things. So there were the cars at the end when the safety car went out. It was Hamilton, and then there were all these cars that had been lapped by Hamilton, and then there were a certain amount of cars that had been lapped by Verstappen already catching up to Hamilton, and that was one of the issues where they let only the cars in between those two drivers unlap themselves in that last lap. And then there were still a couple cars behind Verstappen that didn't get to unlap themselves. So I think that was one iffy call. Mercedes ended up filing a complaint on Verstappen for he pulled ahead of Hamilton under the safety car for a moment. and that was an issue. So there's a couple different things in play here where we weren't really sure what was the right call at the end of the day.
For those who didn't watch it, Nicholas Latifi from the Williams team had a collision. It was a pretty serious incident, and so to clear the track and make sure it was safe for everyone took a couple of laps, and those laps do count against the number of total laps in the race, even though under a virtual safety car, you're not allowed to pass anyone. So to take 3 out of the 4 critical laps where no passing is allowed in the last race of the season, where the world championship is tied for 2 drivers at exactly equal points, is kind of an insane situation. And so, definitely want to acknowledge that, but then for the FIA to make the call for certain cars to unlap themselves, but not have the whole field unlap themselves, is where a lot of the controversy came from.
And I think the main call for the FIA is we want to see an actual race decide the championship versus it happened in their safety car, so there's no real race that decided.
Can you imagine if the drivers' championship was decided by a fucking safety car?
Yeah.
Oh, and I mean, nobody wants to see a race won under the safety car. Any race, let alone the last race of the season, championships on the line. Totally agree with that.
It does make it feel it was the FIA's decision that decided the Drivers' Championship, and I think that's where most people feel uncomfortable.
And a lot of people seem pretty upset about it, most notably our boy Hamilton.
Which, I mean, understandably, I'm sure he'd be feeling some type of way after possibly having the opportunity to break one of the few records that he hasn't broken. I mean, I get it, but he did kind of drop off the face of the earth for a bit.
Unfollowed everyone on Instagram.
And let's just say he had the worst returning caption ever. It was so lame. I feel like my grandma could have written a better caption. Like, no lie. It would have been a bunch of emojis, but at least it would have been interesting.
Which, honestly, considering he really has a flair for the dramatic, I expected a little more.
He needs to get a new PR director, honestly.
I feel like it's Angela. I feel like it's all Angela behind the scenes.
Angela's actually just pulling triples. Doing double, triple duty, but... Honestly, though, in terms of the overall sport, we're glad he's back. Excited to see what he has for 2022. And speaking of 2022, a bunch of the teams have started unveiling their cars. And ladies, I don't know about you, but I think they're looking pretty hot.
And on next week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about the upcoming changes to the 2022 season. So if you've listened this far, thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week. We drop episodes on Thursdays. If you want to learn more, you can check out our website. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on Instagram @grid.gals. And if you have questions, love what you heard, want to just reach out, you can email us at gridgals@gmail.com. No dot in between. We'll see you back here next week.
Well, gals, I think that's it for today. So we'll checker flag this session and we'll catch you back on the grid next Thursday.